What's up, people? It's your boy, KJ Slow Jammin' James, and you're tuning in to another Kicking It with KJ production coming live from KJ Studios. So sit back, relax, open your mind, and whether you like it, love it, or hate it, when you kick it with KJ, you get 100% authenticity. So let's go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Kicking It with KJ, PTSD and Me. Episode 3. Here's to those who suffer in silence, understand the frustration of everything bothering them, and for those who give their all to others. What heals me often ends up being what wounds me, but you're not alone. And hopefully we've kind of gone there. So as I continue to read through JB Spisso's book, Warrior Leadership, he talks about warriors learn from warriors. And I really enjoyed that because I feel like me being authentic and honest about my feelings seems to lean more on the negative side, and that's not the intent. But it was funny as I read that, and I was talking to some friends about this new adventure and asking for their thoughts on my last 2 podcasts. It's amazing how the collaboration of people, who care for one another, when they exchange their thoughts, it drives faith, positivity, and inspiration. I can't tell you that's pretty amazing, because it's what I appreciate is that while my last 2 episodes leaned a bit on the negative side, it's a part of me and my internal struggles that I deal with. And there was no judgment. It was actually just good conversation, exchanging ideas. And I think that's beneficial for someone like me, so I appreciate it. Because it's what I hold at bay while putting on my mask of positivity and the internal battles begin. Most people who understand me understand it's like 2 gladiators every day when you wake up. Both resemble you, one dark and one light. But who will champion the arena that day? Am I alone? Can anyone relate? I know there's folks out there who can. But what was amazing about these friends, some I've known for a long time, while others simply I've had some interaction with. But at the end of the day, their authenticity was very apparent, regardless of time knowing them. One thing that was consistent from all of them was that they all noted I've always inspired them by my actions of love and selflessness. And it kind of caught them off guard when I'd shared some of my inner thoughts. And, I've kept them at bay for years because, I think I came from a world where you're always judged. You're always potentially criticized. But if people lose faith in you, you just don't know how that's going to impact or influence your leadership or your ability to inspire. And to get it off my chest was a blessing, because honestly, I stopped thinking about those things. And hopefully anybody else who deals with the same things I do, they feel confident going forward and finding a way to find ways to have an outlet. I had a long talk with a friend the other day, and I really believe we're cut from the same cloth. And it kind of boiled down to, it's like, what are you going to do with these negative thoughts, though? And I know this person, and they're about faith and family. And I hope they lean back into that faith so it impacts their family in a positive way. But the one thing that was consistent from all my friends, what they noted was I inspired them with actions of love and selflessness. Being selfless and serving has always been my calling, and it made sense. I started to reflect on it, and it made me wonder if some of my struggles, from the first 2 podcasts, maybe they were feelings of entitlement. I mean, it brought me there thinking, man, did I feel like, after all these years serving, that I was owed something? And then that links into like, well, do we do it because we want something in return? I don't know. I'm still wrapping my head around that. But it made sense. It made me wonder if my struggles of feeling of entitlement, what about me, or even growing tired of serving others, was the cause. It also tied back to what I said in the beginning. What heals me often ends up being what wounds me. And so it's like this cycle. And there's something that I've got to change. And I don't want to break this cycle of being a servant or a service-based leader, a servant leader. And I definitely don't do it because I expect something in return every time. But a part of me sometimes thinks that there are times I do need it reciprocated. And I think that kind of was the driving force of what had bothered me in what I see. And I started seeing some posts on social media where people are questioning the relationships they have with people. Not necessarily questioning the relationships, but they're starting to see the authentic, true colors of people. And I find that interesting because some of the people that posted that, I could honestly have a real good dialogue with them about some self-awareness and the things that I've seen and where I felt let down. But anyways, then one question sent me back to a book that had always stood out, mostly because when I read it, I do believe it represented one of my core values of leadership: lead with love. Warren Buffett once said, "There's nobody I know who commands the love of others who doesn't feel like a success. And I cannot imagine people who are not loved feel very successful." No doubt if you work in an institution or you live in a life of society where you don't feel loved or appreciated, you probably don't feel very successful. You probably are second guessing yourself and questioning yourself. And that might tie back into some of the things I talked about the last podcast with how I believe people, they post irresponsibly. And these are grown-ups because I sure in the heck don't have kids. Well, the behaviors are kid-like, but I don't have kids on my Facebook friends list. That hit my soul because I do believe with love we can overcome any obstacle together. Then it immediately made me think of my last episode. And like that Falcon, on my podcast, that F-16 Kicking It with KJ Falcon dropping a bomb and creating that right of the boom explosion, I realized that what has been bothering me a lot is the amount of hate I've been seeing and exposed to. Some of it's self-hate probably. And then when you see it, it almost validates some of the internal struggle you have. But it is what fuels me to do Kicking It with KJ. It's what fuels me to lead by example in my family. It is what drives me to serve my country community. I want better for everybody. What hurt was the doubting created by the data that showed maybe if I was lucky, 10% of my friends took time to listen to this podcast. Who knows? I still wonder. It bothered me because I have always given my time. Many of my friends have benefited from my time or my money and love for their cause. But when I ask them to give me 20 minutes of their time for something that could benefit me, the data still doesn't say it's there. I understand that the content may not always be what they want, but no one I can't say no one. Very, very, very few have actually picked up a phone, sent a text or an email, and gave me some feedback or ideas. Well, here we are in KJ Studios. So anytime you want to come on and help me make this better, we'll see which one of you are really down to do that. The email is always attached. Most of you have my cell phone number, and anybody on my Facebook can absolutely Facebook message me. But I wanted to focus on what fueled me. And what fuels me is to lead by example in my family. It's what drives me to serve my country, because I still serve my country, and I absolutely love serving my community. I hate the doubts that I was getting, and it bothered me. But I realized I was walking away from those podcasts not feeling better. I actually, I actually wondered what people were thinking still. And I wonder if that's something I'll ever let go of. But it's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to come across as venting. But if I'm going to go back and talk about me in a majority, pretty much my whole life has been in the military, I figured I needed to go back. And it was funny because when I was reading Warrior Leadership, and it talked about warriors learn from warriors. And there was something that stood out from that about, don't come here with your whining, come here with solutions. And I realized, am I really coming with solutions? And I don't know. I don't think so. But I definitely shifted into a more positive mindset because if I was going to talk about the military, I was like, man, let me go back to the beginning. So I need to go back to July 1992, San Antonio, Texas. Basic military training. Note that one of the best parts of my long journey is my longtime friend, Mr. Stone. He happened to be someone I met at MEPS. We flew together to BMT. We were in the same flight, and years later got to serve at Travis Air Force Base before he departed Lackland for his final assignment. His nickname was Rap. This was kind of one of the first thoughts that ran to my mind when I went back over 28 years ago, because this was the first time I was on my own. His name, Rap, good dude. This is the first time I believe I can remember leading with love, or something close, something that I can recall. Why? Because this is the first time 57 young warriors from every corner of the world came together and looked out for one another as a team. It was us against the training instructors. We were Flight 452. I believe we were Disneyland. We took care of one another. We talked a lot of shit. We clowned. We dogged each other, but we always stood together. And it was my first time away from home and being blued for what would be a 28-plus year journey. It was this group of dudes, these young men, who would get me through chapter 1 of my Air Force journey. They would teach me all the fancy tricks of hiding magazines in the bedpost and how to use the flashlight in a special way to where when you were supposed to be asleep, you could write a letter. It was all the stuff that anyone who's been to BMT knows about. The secret stash of cleaning stuff. Laughing at someone getting yelled at for not following instructions or having to give a 341. Here we were, this big group of rainbows. A name given to those newbies who were so new they still had hair, wore civilian clothes with a belt, canteen, and that big obnoxious black binder holder, whatever the hell it's called, to keep my Airman's Handbook safe. You know, the big book that you got to study for your test in order to graduate basic training, which, by the way, I failed the first time. I did pass it with flying colors the second time. And you better be studying that book anytime you're standing around. Let me go back to the fact that I didn't pass the first time. So every time I had it open, I wasn't reading. I was just staring at blurs, probably trying to stay awake, because that was the one time I'd swear you never got enough sleep. I also recall we had the biggest meanest training instructor, Tech Sergeant Andy Anderson, who was a former Marine. In comparison to today's BMT, which may feel something like a tour of Google, I cannot tell you how scary he was. This dude was a giant, and he was a former Marine, and he was mean. You would think you could fool these TIs. But I'll tell you, let me share a little story about how I learned quickly that you could not. I learned one day when wiping my nose of snot running just under my upper lip while standing at attention. But when the TI looked away, you know I wiped it away. The TI returned and noted that I did not have snot any longer running down my nose and on my lip. So for those who were already smiling, laughing, this was my lesson in discipline, following orders, and integrity. Oh, you want to know how it went down. You want to know how the big chief as a rainbow got handled. Well, it was about 15 minutes of first inquiring about the missing snot. You know, things like, well, where the fuck did that snot go? It didn't just walk away. Did you eat it? Did you eat it? Are you that hungry? Do you not like the chow? You know, things like that, you know, inquiring about the case of the missing snot. Keep in mind, you know, anything you say will never be correct, but for the entertainment value of the pissed off TI. And also note, this is summer in San Antonio. It's hot as hell. But I do believe this is something that makes it fun for the TI. Some of the perks of the job at the time, you know, the things today everybody would cry boo-hoo and say, oh, poor me, this isn't right, type of stuff. But I'm going to tell you this. I miss it. I miss that shit. However, questions did range, as I said earlier. Did you eat the snot? You nasty MF. Did you wipe it in your arm? Did your parents raise you like this? Man, what I heard was all my fellow airmen who could not laugh, but you could hear the trying to not blow up. And then the final, oh, I guess an alien zapped that snot away. Only to get a final piece of advice. When you're at attention, you don't fucking move. I'll save the story one day where I was taught that only picnickers and dick lickers come from California. See, that's the BMT that I learned how to lead with love. I write this story with the biggest smile on my face. I'm not offended. I'm not sensitive, but realizing I'm sharing a piece of me, but in contrast to what is acceptable today, have an aha moment to things I ponder. How I was brought into an institution a certain way and how I exited are like night and day. But it don't offend me. I turned out to go from 0 stripes to all the stripes. Not saying I was the best leader, but I know I wasn't the worst. And the one thing I know I did best, I cared about my people. So I will say that the changes today, all are not necessarily for the better. Some will say they were, but I don't agree. But I can appreciate the approach of the TIs back then because it pushed me and the team, all of us of 58, Flight 452, to be closer, to be cohesive. And the number of my teammates who looked out for me with jokes, toilet paper, Kleenex, and words of affirmation showed me they cared. It was funny because my BMT yearbook was kept safe and packed up for years, 28 years, until I shared it with the rock stars, such as Matt Sergeant Brown and Kane, who led my retirement ceremony here in Las Vegas. What was cool was that a few in attendance due to COVID signed my yearbook on my way out. Very unique and interesting opportunity to say my BMT brothers signed it coming in, and those who got to attend my retirement signed it going out. And the comments, they were all positive. So I must have did something right. But it gave me a chance to reflect on the stories from 28 years ago, and things came flooding back. Positivity, a sense of self, a self-understanding that, maybe you just adapted to the times. And when you couldn't adapt no more, you did the right thing. Because someone once told me, if you're not happy, don't stay in. And maybe I just wasn't happy with how things were looking. And maybe that's kind of validating why I wrote what I wrote, thought what I thought, spoke what I spoke on my last 2 podcasts. But that's not what I want to do. With social media, I am tempted to see if any of these folks are there, but it's been years. I don't know. And honestly, would they care? They might. I don't know. What I found is when a lot of groups from the past all of a sudden find each other, it's real exciting for the first 5 minutes. Then the posts fade. And the true dedication, the true inclusiveness fades. And you see that there's a handful still left there talking. But I tell you this has been therapeutic. It's been positive. And despite the few moments of the scary stuff and I've had a good time sharing, and I feel like it's helping me. And I have to learn that if it's helping me, it's a win. For those who want to join and listen, even better. For those who want to join me and share and build and make sure the message gets out to those people who need to hear it, even more awesome. For those of you joining, I really enjoyed sharing this. It was therapeutic, and I actually feel happy if anyone out there is suffering in silence, know you're not alone. It happens a lot. It happens more than we desire to acknowledge and know. But a lot of people are finally coming out and speaking on it. And that's just say something. Don't hold it in. Don't take it out on people. Find a way to cope. For me, it's the weights. Now it's this. It's connecting. It's always been about connecting. And that's my goal, is to connect with folks and share a little something about me. So if anyone is out there suffering in silence, wonder if you're alone, you're not. If you're interested in sharing your stories and you want to take a leap of faith, do so. I'll share your story, or take the leap like I did. It's not that expensive, depending on how you want to do it. But you absolutely should put your story out there. I pray everybody is well. I wish you happiness and love. And I hope you take care. And thank you for kicking it with KJ.